So guys, when we talk about something that changes history, we're not talking about something that was just on the news for one day or 2 days. We're talking about something that will be remembered forever and ever. Something that made everyone in the world stop what they were doing and listen, and something that made people think differently about everything. India's big move didn't just make waves with army people, it made shockwaves go through the important offices in Washington, in Beijing, in Moscow, and in every country that thought they knew exactly who was powerful and who wasn't. This wasn't just a big move, it was like writing a message on the whole world's heart that said things are different now and the world will never look the same again. The big deal about this is how one action changed what people thought for many, many years to come. India was often put to the side when big countries made decisions. People heard what India said, but didn't always think it was important. People listened to India's warnings, but didn't always take them seriously. But in one big moment, India went from being on the sidelines to being in the middle of everything, from watching things happen to being the leader, from waiting for people to notice them to making people pay attention right away. That's what happens when something changes history. It changes how people think, not just for now, but for kids and grandkids too. What makes this move so special isn't just how they did it, but what it meant. It became like a mirror showing the world that being powerful isn't something you're born with. You have to make yourself powerful. The big move proved that a country doesn't need to ask permission to protect itself, and it doesn't need to wait for someone to say, okay, you can do that before they act to help their own people. It showed that India had stopped being scared and unsure and became confident and sure, where every action they take is important and shows they're real leaders. This is also a big deal because it changed friendships between countries. The world reacts in shock, and it made countries change their plans. Countries that used to think India wasn't that strong had to think again about what they were doing. They had to admit India was strong and respect how determined India was. Bad guys who thought wrong about how patient India was learned that being quiet doesn't mean you're weak and being patient doesn't mean you're scared. Friends who had taken India for granted were reminded that real friendship is when both countries are equal, not when one country talks down to the other. These kinds of changes don't happen very often, and when they do happen, they change everything about how countries treat each other. The big deal about this move also comes from how it woke up millions of Indian people themselves. It wasn't just the world that was surprised, the spirit of the whole country was stirred up. People who had been told that their country was too careful, too slow, and depended on others too much now saw with their own eyes that India could act fast, boldly, and with confidence. That change in believing in themselves is maybe the biggest impact of all. Because when a country believes in itself, there's nothing on earth that can stop it. The world will remember this big move not just because of how perfectly it was done, but because of how powerful its message was. It was the moment when India told the world that it wasn't just part of history, it was making history. Ladies and gentlemen, being brave and having big dreams are two things that have always decided what happens to countries. And when they come together, they create a moment that changes everything. India's big move wasn't just about how strong their weapons were or how mighty their army was. It was about having the courage to act when others didn't believe they would, and having the vision to see past being scared, past being unsure, and past the limits that used to hold the country back. Being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about deciding to be stronger than your fear. And India got stronger in a way that told the world it wouldn't wait around anymore. It wouldn't be limited by being unsure. It wouldn't stay quiet when someone was mean to them. This courage came from hundreds of years of struggling, from remembering how people used to think they weren't important, from the hard work of fighting battles not just with weapons, but also in trying to get people to respect them. It takes courage for a country to stand tall when everyone in the world is watching, waiting for them to mess up, waiting for them to make a mistake. But instead of getting smaller, India chose to stand even taller, to show through their actions that they would make their own choices. This wasn't crazy bravery. It was smart courage, the kind that knows there are risks, but does it anyway, because protecting your country's freedom and dignity is worth more than staying quiet and comfortable. But being brave alone isn't enough. A country might act boldly once, but without big dreams, India's strategic brilliance explained that boldness goes away like a tiny spark, instead of becoming a big fire that lights up the future. What made this big move so amazing was the vision behind it. A vision that looked past the fighting, past the news headlines, into the future of India's role in the world. It was the vision to know that power today isn't about taking over other places, but about having influence and respect and being able to inspire others. India's leaders understood that what they did wouldn't just keep their borders safe. It would also tell the world that India was starting a new chapter where it's not just reacting to big, powerful countries. It's helping to shape what happens in the whole world. Vision is being able to see things that aren't there yet, to believe in things that others say are impossible, and to act with faith that tomorrow will be worth today's hard work. India's vision in this moment was to rise up not as just a local player with limits, but as a world power guided by doing what's right, being good, and being strong. This vision carried the dream of 1 billion people, the hope of millions who had wanted to see their country get respect, and the determination to make sure that kids and grandkids would inherit a country that acts with pride, with authority, and with confidence that can't be shaken. Courage and vision together can't be stopped. And in this moment, India showed both. It had the courage to make the big move and the vision to know that this move wasn't just about today, but about tomorrow too. That's what shocked the world. Not just what they did, but seeing that this country had found its voice, its strength, and its purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, when you want to show you're strong, you don't just use words, you show it with action, with being determined, and with an unshakable will to prove that a country won't bend under doubt or pressure anymore. India's big move was more than just an army thing. It was like thunder, telling the world that the time of being quiet was over. The time of being unsure had ended. And India would never again ask for permission to defend its dignity. This wasn't about being mean to others. It was about standing up for yourself. Standing up means that a great country has the right and the job to protect its people, its borders, and its future without giving up anything. For many years, people talked about India as a place with potential, as a country with promise that was waiting to happen someday. But potential without action is just a shadow of what could be. In this one big decisive act, India turned potential into power, and power into being really present and important. The message about being strong wasn't hidden behind closed doors or whispered in meetings. It was written boldly in the sky, carried through how perfectly their forces did their job, and made bigger by how surprised the whole world was. Strength beyond boundaries, being strong in this moment, couldn't be denied, and the world had to listen. This message was also deeply meaningful. It told enemies that being patient should never be mistaken for being weak, and holding back should never be confused with being scared. For too long, India's careful responses had been misunderstood. Its quietness was misinterpreted. But when the big move came, it erased those wrong ideas in an instant. It was a clear message. India may love peace, but it will never just sit there and watch when there are threats. That clearness is what gave the move its strength. Because being strong isn't just about weapons. It's about being determined, about being willing to act when action is needed. A message about being strong also changes relationships. To friends, it was a reminder that India isn't a little partner to be guided, but an equal power to be respected. To rivals, it was a warning that mean things would never go unanswered. And to its own people, it was a promise that their country would never again hesitate when their safety, pride, and freedom were on the line. This is the power of a real message. It speaks in many directions at once, and it changes how everyone who hears it thinks. Maybe the biggest weight of this message is that it lasts forever. Words can fade away, headlines can disappear. But the memory of a country rising to its strength stays forever. This wasn't just a response to one bad thing that happened. It was the opening of a new chapter, one where India's voice is firm, its actions are decisive, and everyone on the world stage can't ignore it. A message about being strong is a turning point. And with this big move, India told the world that it's ready not just to stand among the powerful, but to help decide what being powerful even means. Ladies and gentlemen, when the whole world wakes up, it's not because of whispers or quiet gestures. It happens because of a moment so powerful that it makes the entire world open its eyes and see reality in a way they never did before. India's big move was that kind of moment. A spark that didn't stay in one battlefield or one border but spread like a wave, reaching countries far and wide. It made leaders, war planners, and ordinary people all rethink who has power and where history is going. This wasn't just an Indian thing, it was a world thing, a reminder that no country should be underestimated and no story is permanent. The world waking up was realizing that India had grown beyond just being important in its area and had stepped into being important to the whole world. For too long, the world had talked about India's growth like it was something that might happen someday, like it was a promise waiting for some far-off future. But in one decisive action, India showed that the future had arrived. Its power was no longer something that might happen, but something happening right now. Countries that had only measured India's strength by how much money it made suddenly saw its willpower, its smart planning, Oprah on courage and leadership, and its courage displayed in action. The waking up wasn't just about recognizing what India could do. It was about recognizing India's place among the most powerful countries in the world. This waking up also came with a change in how countries viewed their own strategies. Countries that had long relied on old ideas about India staying careful were forced to redraw their maps of what was risky and what was an opportunity. Rivals who believed India would stay cautious and limited saw that being patient has its limits. And when those limits are crossed, India's response wouldn't just be strong. It would be unforgettable. Allies who had taken India's friendship lightly realized that this wasn't a country to be guided, but a partner to be respected and treated as an equal. This change in how people saw things was a world awakening by itself, because it forced countries to look beyond their old ways of thinking and to recognize the dawn of a new balance of power. But maybe the deepest part of this awakening was emotional and symbolic around the world. Ordinary people, those who have felt their own countries overlooked, their voices unheard, their dignity challenged, saw in India's action a reflection of their own hope. They saw proof that power can rise from being patient, that strength can come from being quiet, and that when a country chooses courage over giving up, it changes not only its own destiny, but also the story of the world. India's big move became a lesson to the powerless that no one stays powerless forever, and to the powerful that no one stays unchallenged forever. This world awakening isn't temporary. It marks a change that will shape the years to come. It has changed how countries view leadership, courage, and freedom. It has shown that the balance of power isn't locked in history, but is always open to change. And in this awakening, the world has come to see India not as a follower of destiny, but as a creator of it. Ladies and gentlemen, there are moments when the roar of weapons and the display of military might seem to take over the world. But history has always shown that truth carries a force greater than any arsenal. Truth over power isn't just a saying. It's a rule that can shake empires, change friendships between countries, and inspire people all over the globe. India's big move wasn't simply about proving strength through firepower. It was about proving that when a country acts with strong beliefs rooted in truth, even the most powerful must pause, listen, a strike that changed global balance, and acknowledge what can't be denied. Truth is the foundation that real power stands on. And without it, power becomes fragile, weak, and hollow. India's action carried the undeniable truth that it would no longer put up with threats to its freedom, that it would no longer stay quiet while its people and borders were challenged, and that peace can't be one-sided. It requires respect, equality, and fairness. This truth shook the world more than the move itself, because it was a reminder that real strength isn't about controlling others. It's about justice. And justice touches people's hearts much deeper than intimidation ever could. The world stage had gotten used to power being held by just a few countries, with stories written and rewritten to suit their interests. But this moment reminded the world that truth doesn't bend to stories. It breaks them apart. India didn't act to get approval or applause. It acted because the truth demanded it. And when truth drives action, it gains a legitimacy that no propaganda, no denial, and no manipulation can erase. Even those who tried to criticize the move couldn't deny the reality that India had spoken with authenticity. And authenticity carries a power that reaches beyond borders. This rule of truth over power also inspired millions within India itself. For citizens long used to hearing others define their country's role, this was a moment of clarity. The move wasn't just a military thing, it was a moral stand, a statement that their country wouldn't be bullied, silenced, or pushed aside. When people see truth guiding action, it wakes up in them a sense of pride and belonging that no material achievement can provide. And when a billion voices stand united in that pride, the world is forced to recognize a power greater than weapons, the power of believing in what's right. On the international front, the truth carried by this move changed calculations everywhere. For rivals, it was a lesson that lying and aggression could no longer be hidden behind the mask of power. For allies, it was reassurance that India's partnerships are built on honesty, not manipulation. For neutral observers, it was proof that world politics isn't only about who has the biggest arsenal, but about who stands most firmly for what is just and fair. This is why truth is mightier than power. Because power may make people afraid, but truth makes people respect you, and respect lasts far longer than fear ever can. India's big move reminded the world that in the contest between power and truth, it's truth that ultimately wins. Because truth carries within it the lessons for the future generations, strength of lasting forever, the clarity of justice, and the authority of what is undeniably real. Ladies and gentlemen, throughout history there have been turning points when the world shifted, when old powers lost their grip and new voices emerged to redefine the world stage. These moments are rarely quiet, and they're never accidents. They come with bold actions, with declarations that can no longer be ignored, and with the undeniable rise of countries that refuse to stay in the shadows. India's big move was one such moment, a spark that signaled the birth of a new world order, one not defined by a few countries being in charge, but by the awakening of many. For many years, the world order had been shaped and guarded by a handful of countries, often leaving others to play supporting roles. Power was kept in one place, influence was monopolized, and decisions were made in circles that left out much of the world. But when India acted with decisive strength, it challenged that monopoly. The move wasn't just a military thing. It was a reminder that world authority isn't something that a few countries get to keep forever, but something that can be reshaped by courage, vision, and the will of a rising people. India's voice wasn't asking to be heard. It demanded to be recognized. And in that moment, the stage of world politics began to shift. This new world order isn't about replacing one superpower with another. It's about rewriting the rules of respect, equality, and influence. India demonstrated that leadership in the modern age isn't just measured by economic size or military might, but by the ability to act with strong beliefs and to inspire people to believe. It showed that a country rooted in democracy, guided by principles, and fueled by the dreams of its citizens could no longer be pushed aside. The move announced to the world that India isn't simply responding to history, it's now shaping it. The impact of this shift was felt everywhere. Rivals who once assumed India's restraint would keep it contained had to face the reality that their calculations were outdated. Allies who once viewed India as a junior partner were reminded that true partnerships are forged only when both stand as equals. And countries across Asia, Africa, conclusion, power of vision, and beyond saw in India's rise a reflection of their own hopes. The world is no longer the property of a few powers, but an open field where determination and unity can elevate any country. This is what makes it a new world order. The redistribution of influence, the acknowledgement of new players, and the rise of voices that had long been overlooked. What truly makes this moment historic is the fact that it inspired both respect and recalibration. Respect because India's courage earned the world's attention in a way no speech or negotiation could. Recalibration because countries now know that the balance of power cannot stay the same. It must shift with the realities of the present. This is how new world orders are born, not in theory, but in bold, irreversible acts that redefine how countries interact, how they align, and how they compete. India's big move will be remembered as more than a response to a challenge. It will be remembered as the moment that signaled to the world that the age of exclusivity is over and the age of equality in power has begun.